Hi, I'm Emily Barre from New Orleans, and I'd like to welcome you to my kitchen. Paula asked us this week to share with you our favorite side dish recipes using Philadelphia cream cheese. And the recipe I'd like to share with you today is called cream spinach and gemelli. I've always liked cream spinach a lot, but sometimes I can find it to be very heavy and very rich as a side dish. So my thought was to add a little pasta to it, stretches it a little bit, doesn't feel as heavy, and it actually acts as your starch and your vegetable. So I'd like to get started showing you how I prepare this dish. I started out with 4 strips of bacon that I cooked down, but I removed the bacon from the pan and chopped it up and reserved it for later. I didn't want the bacon to overcook or go too far, plus I wanted it chopped. But I wanted the reserved bacon to saute my onions and my tarragon. I have about 3 green onions, whites and greens, chopped nice and small, that I'm going to saute just till soft in the remaining bacon grease. To this, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of chopped fresh tarragon. Tarragon's a nice herb that gives a little bit of a kind of a licoricey aroma and a little bit of a licoricey flavor. Kind of nice in cream spinach. We're only going to saute this for a little while till the onions are soft. It really doesn't have to go too far, too long. Now the pasta that I've chose to put with this is called gemelli. Gemelli is short strips, 2 short strands, about 2 inches in length, that are wrapped together, twisted together. It's a nice short pasta that allows the cream spinach to be able to be blended throughout. This has always been my pasta of choice for this dish, and just lately I'm having a difficult time finding it. If you cannot find gemelli in your area, you can use Fusilli Springs or even rotini. But the whole idea is to look for a short pasta that's got a little bit of texture by either being twisted or twirled. Right now, I had the pasta cooked and it's on the side waiting to get tossed into this dish. So usually I'll cook the pasta at one time, and while the pasta's cooking, I'm cooking the bacon, so that at this point almost everything's going to be ready to add together. Now that the onions are nice and soft, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of Worcestershire. This is going to be the base to our sauce. So let's get about a tablespoon of Worcestershire in. And there's really no cooking involved in the Worcestershire. You just want it to start to invade into the rest of the flavors and become part of what's going on here. Now, in cream spinach, I like to use fresh spinach. And one thing I find very necessary is that you take all the heavy stems off of spinach. There's nothing worse than cooking it down nice, getting all the flavors in, and then feel like you're eating a big old piece of grass or a weed. So take the time, if you're going to use fresh spinach, to break those stems off and throw them away. Now that our onions are nice and sauteed, and boy, they sure do smell good, we're going to go ahead and add, this is 10 ounces of fresh spinach that has been cleaned and all the stems have been removed. We're going to drop this down into the pan. I know you're saying, oh my God, that looks like a lot, you're overflowing. But when spinach cooks down and wilts down, there's really not going to be much left to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to stir it just a little bit to kind of help it get down into the heat. It's the heat that actually is going to start the wilting process. Once we get this to wilt down a lot, I'm going to go ahead and cover it, saute it for a little while. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you're dealing with live filming, just like live TV. Didn't expect a call to come in. So I'm back with you. What we were talking about is trying to use the heat from the pan to start to wilt this spinach. And I'm not really worried about tossing it as much yet as getting the heat in there. Also, it's time to add the salt. I put 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I can find the salt. Here it is. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt going right on top of the spinach. You ever feel like sometimes you lose everything? You put it together, maybe it'd be a little bit easier. But anyway, so I'm now going to cover this and let this wilt. After I let it wilt for a little while, I'm going to uncover it and keep the heat up a little bit because I want to evaporate the water out of the spinach. I don't want the spinach water. I'm actually going to want the cream that we're going to make by using the Philadelphia cream cheese, Parmesan cheese, a little milk, and then we're going to add that pasta, and the whole thing's going to make a nice dish. So when I come back, we'll be ready to add the pasta and the rest of the ingredients. As you can see, about 8 minutes have elapsed, and look how much that spinach is wilted down. This is going to be perfect for our pasta. Also, if you notice, there's not a puddle or a big amount of spinach water left in here. So we're now ready to start to build our sauce. First thing we're going to do to this is we're going to add the pasta. Now before I drain this pasta, I actually reserved a cup of the pasta water. This is just in case I need it to help thin down my sauce. Sometimes the pasta will continue to absorb your milk or whatever your liquids are, and you need to thin your sauce. So always reserve a cup of pasta water. You may not need it, but just in case. So we're going to go ahead and put the pasta into our spinach. And I really don't want to start stirring too much yet. I want to add the 8 ounces of cream cheese right now. The Philadelphia cream cheese has been cut up and cubed, not for anything more than to make it easier to melt. We're going to use the heat from the pasta and the heat from the spinach to actually start melting this cream cheese, which is about 1/4 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. Help distribute that out a little bit. Our 4 strips of bacon that were previously cooked and cut up. And I have 4 ounces of warm milk. And we're going to use that to start the cream cheese to creaming. Alright, and now it's a matter of blending this together. We're actually going to create a sauce. Alright, so while this is working a little bit, let me tell you about my love of Philadelphia cream cheese. I feel like Paula Deen with her butter. I use cream cheese so much. Usually when I find the Philadelphia brand cream cheese, I'm buying 10 boxes at a time. We use it not only for side dishes, but we use it in our appetizers, we use it in our desserts. It's such a versatile cheese to use. I also find too, whenever a recipe calls for heavy cream, there's got to be some way you can use Philadelphia cream cheese to help blend and cream out that recipe without having to use heavy cream. Why do I do that? I don't keep heavy cream in the house. Boy, I always have a supply of Philadelphia cream cheese. So that was my reasoning behind doing the creamed spinach with the pasta. Now, like I said, this isn't an exact science. This is a technique and an idea. If you have a different pasta that you like better, go ahead and try that pasta. If you like less pasta and more spinach, play with the results. When you change the amount of pasta to the amount of spinach, you're not going to greatly change the flavor or the taste. It's going to be more to the liking of how you would like to serve it. The necessary part is the cream cheese. The cream cheese is what's creating the sauce for the creamed spinach, so don't cut back on the cheese. Also too, you can try some different flavorings and different seasonings. I like the tarragon and the green onions. I bet this would be wonderful with basil. Don't be afraid to experiment with the different spices. As you can see now, everything's well blended. You have spinach throughout, cream cheese throughout, and the rotini. We're going to go ahead now and we're going to plate this family style. We're going to go ahead and dump it into our pasta bowl. Clean up the sides a little bit. And this, my friends, is creamed spinach with gemelli. We would put this in the middle of our table. Everybody will sit around and serve themselves tonight. We're going to have broiled salmon with it. You'll have a piece of salmon. Serve yourself as much pasta as you like. And I'm going to come behind them with a little fresh Parmesan and grate it over the top. I hope you enjoy my recipe. Thank you for the opportunity to be a real woman of Philadelphia. Thank you.